Here's something most newer authors don't understand. A reader who's confused isn't more intrigued to keep reading to figure out what everything's about. They're frustrated and likely going to put the book down. Writers are sometimes intentionally vague, cryptic, or mysterious to make readers want to learn more. But what they're often doing instead is just disorienting the reader and making it difficult to follow what's going on. In the opening pages, we need to know who the protagonist is, where we are, and what's going on. Full stop. The reader should be able to understand these foundational facts without reading the description of your book. And if they can't, then you're likely confusing them. Here's the mindset shift I want you to make. Suspense doesn't come from intentionally withholding essential information from the reader, but giving them enough information to make them intrigued to know what happens next.
There's a difference between confusion and curiosity, obviously, of course, but it's a fine line when it comes to writing your story on whether or not what you're putting into the story when you're leaving these cryptic messages, when you try to be mysterious, when you're trying to hint stuff that's going to happen in the future of the story. It is a fine line between whether or not you're confusing your readers or you're actually intriguing them, creating curiosity. And it's such a fine line. It's like, how do I know if I'm cooking or not? If I'm letting them know what is happening and getting them curious to know what's going to be happening afterwards and what's happening next. It wasn't until I was working with somebody and I discovered that they were having that issue where it came to me. I was like, okay, there's a reason why I'm confused in this story. The main reason why I was confused in that story, which I think is what happened to most people, is when you're trying to leave breadcrumbs of what the bigger picture is. I think that's the issue, right? Because if I'm reading a story, right, for the first time, in my mind, I'm trying to figure out who's the main character, what the story is about, what's the path, like what's the setting. Like I'm trying to get an understanding, a grasp of the foundation of the story, what the core essence is. And if I don't have that, then it's like it's hard for me to feel the curiosity or develop interest for the story. So I came up with this idea, and you let me know if you agree or not. I think confusion comes from lack of understanding of the bigger picture, and I think curiosity comes into play afterwards once you understand what the bigger picture of the story is. So let's say you understand that, okay, this is the main character and he needs to defeat this villain in order to save the world. You understand the bigger picture, right? But the what causes curiosity now is the details within that, within the path, within the journey. How is he going to get stronger? What type of training he's going to go through? What type of character he's going to meet along the way that could help him in that journey, you know? Like, what is the type of impact he's going to have when he defeats the enemy? What happened when he doesn't defeat the enemy and save the world? That's where curiosity comes from because we understand the bigger picture that this main character needs to develop, needs to train, needs to make sure they're in the end of the book to defeat this enemy and save the world. We get that concept, we get the grasp. A lot of stories do that and use that. But what makes it different from every individual story is the details of the path each character takes to get there. And us as a reader, one of the favorite things, at least I like to do, is I like to predict, theorize, come up with, if I was the writer, what would I have the characters do to get to the destination for the best case scenario, or think of what could possibly be the worst case scenario. But that all comes from like after understanding the bigger picture. Confusion comes from lack of understanding the bigger picture and what's truly going on in the story. I truly believe that. And I think once you're able to understand that and you're able to just explain that clearly in the first few chapters, it's a lot easier to have readers invest into the story and follow along because they understand what it's like, where point A is and what point Z is. Well, at least what they believe is point A and point Z. You don't have to completely give away like what the ending is gonna be, of course, but at least give them like a grasp of it all. You know what I mean? And just as long as you try to focus on the journey being the mystery, on how that path is going to reach from point A to point Z, I think that help you a lot in terms of formulating ideas on leaving breadcrumbs and cryptic messages to make the story intriguing, of course. So yeah, I hope you gain some value from this because that's something that I learned like just a couple months ago has been very valuable to me. And I think that advice alone could drastically improve, especially like your first few chapters of your story. Truly, I truly believe that. So yeah, it was great talking. If you guys want to work with me, I do outlines where I help you provide clarity on your outline. I give suggestions, questions, ideas. I give feedback on your outline so that you have a clear vision on how you want to tackle and attack your first draft. If you don't feel prepared or you feel underprepared, we could look through it together. So you could click the link down below for a consultation call. We could look at your outline together so that we be able to prepare you for the first draft. So yeah, hope this video helps. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Remember, don't confusion, curiosity. It's a fine line, but you could walk through it. There is a path to walk through it. All right. Thank you.